Ladies and gentlemen, Bolt fam especially, welcome to the debut show of BoltBlitz Uncut here on StreamYard, YouTube, and of course, the platform formerly known as Twitter, now called X by those of you who care. My name's Booga Peters. Y'all haven't seen me for a minute, but hopefully you'll welcome me back into your ears and your hearts as we're going to give this BoltBlitz thing one more shot. As I will be every night on this show, I'm joined by my producer extraordinaire, Kyle Nash. Kyle, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you're feeling good. You excited for this, man? We got quite
excited. Listen, I was losing in my entire. First of all, thanks for making me part of the intro. I keep forgetting, even though I'm the producer, you're going to give me my props. And I mean, I did spend the time to get your backdrop right. So there's that. No, but listen, I'm stoked for you. I'm super excited for you. And the docket you have for tonight is crazy. So I'll just get, I'm ready to get out the way and let you talk some ball, man.
Well, I mean, it's not often many people have to get out of my way. I'm not a very assuming presence, if you will. So I'll hit them bare feet and hit a juke here to there. And we're going to go ahead and bring in our next guest, our first guest, one of my favorite minds in all of football. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Sat next to him at the Senior Bowl back in 2014. Like to welcome him back to a BoltBlitz program, this time on BoltBlitz Uncut. Emory Hunt of CBS Sports, and of course also a football game plan. Emory, welcome back to BoltBlitz, and thank you for joining us here tonight. How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling good, man. I appreciate you bringing me on the show.
And listen, I got to jump in real quick, Booga, because I know we talked about doing this intro. You can remember the year that you met Emory. I can't, but I have a fighting chance. Because when here's the tie into the Chargers. Follow me, okay? We have a mutual friend, Bill Carroll, the professor, right?
Yeah.
Doing his thing. He introduces me to you, and it was the same Senior Bowl where I asked you about Cortez Broughton.
Oh my gosh.
That was just as much for you, Emory, as it was to watch Booga go, oh my gosh.
There are Charger fans who won't remember him.
Well, that's the thing. The main reason why I know about him is because he was a big deal playing on Cincinnati in college in the American Athletic Conference. And, of course, he was a big part or would have been a big part of if he didn't get hurt at the Bounce House playing UCF when, one of your rival networks was there doing their thing for college a game day. So that's where I saw Cortez Broughton. I asked you and Bill Carroll about what you thought and whether he should be drafted. And him getting drafted won me money, believe it or not. So thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate it. So there's all the tie-in. And I think that was the same game. What was it? A young Trey Hendrickson got my vote for Defensive Player of the Year, even though he didn't win. So I don't know if you remember what year it is, but that year was when I met you, Emory. There you go.
Listen, I remember Trey Hendrickson year. I can't remember years. Now everything has gotten jumbled. It when you say 10 years, I'm thinking 20. Everything at 2020 kind of stopped and restarted, right? So I remember Trey Hendrickson at the East-West Shrine Bowl vividly because they had a period where it was one-on-one at the end, like their best defensive player versus their best offensive player. He was so dominant they shut down practice because he kept getting sack. And that's when I was like, oh, this dude is a player, regardless of him playing in the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Well, Emory, honestly, I'm glad you brought up an all-star game because you being whom you are and have been in this field for so long, you do go to all of these all-star games. You do actually get out there and sponge as much as you can. Whether it's the East-West Shrine game, obviously the Senior Bowl where you and I met. While you're doing that, obviously it's in an effort to contribute to your football game plan draft guide, and I'm finding out that is still available. Can you tell the folks out there who are listening a little bit about your game plan, the number of scouting reports, and what people can expect when they check it out, and to see that it's still applicable right now?
Yeah, because we have over 1,000 individual scouting reports, so we don't have any lists in there. If I watched 138 quarterbacks, 138 quarterbacks are going to be scouted and listed. And the reason why all of this is important is because when you look at your roster, right, you're trying to figure out, well, the Chargers signed Luke Grimm. Well, who the hell is Luke Grimm? Best believe I have a scouting report on him, right? Or if anybody played in one of these all-star games outside of the Senior Shrine, I have a scouting report. We're talking about College Gridiron Showcase, Tropical Bowl, Hula Bowl, FCS Bowl, the Canadian East-West Bowl, every year I go up there. So I'm always ahead of the curve on the Canadian prospects that we see. And if think about it, only 262 players get drafted, right? But you have another 200 that end up signing undrafted rookie free agents.
UDFAs, yeah.
If you've purchased my guide since 2020, I started doing a draft guide in 2020 digitally. At first, I just put it all on my YouTube channel, but I started doing it digitally. If you purchased one of those since then, right now you would have over 5,400 individual scouting reports.
Oh my God.
And the reason why that's important is because not only would you know your team, and we know rosters tend to be transient when we're talking about second and third team guys, you have a pretty good grasp on the rest of the league. And if you're one that loves to, now that sports betting is kind of popular, you kind of have a good idea who's good and who needs or where there needs some improvement. And it also helps you make you a more knowledgeable fan, whether that's NFL, UFL, CFL. With 5,400 scout reports, you pretty much got a good idea on all three leagues. So that's why it's always valuable to have, because guys pop in and out of rosters, and we have scout reports on virtually all of them.
Well, and especially this time of the year, if you ask me, we've got, preseason games. Those aren't the games that count necessarily, but they sure do count for those young players, those names that are from these smaller schools that maybe a lot of folks have never watched them even play a game on TV. What do you know? Our guy Emory Hunt's there, and he's there watching this. We're not just necessarily taking a guy's name and listing his height and weight next to it and calling that part of our project, if you will. You're doing the hard work, the more than due diligence by showing up and getting it done. And again, that's at Football Gameplan draft guide, footballgameplan.com 2025 draft guide, correct?
/2025 draft guide.
/2025.
And if you want the draft guides from other years, just put 2020 draft guide, 2021 draft, like that. So it's easy to find in this PDF, full color. It's great for, like you said, great for preseason, just to make the preseason much more enjoyable, to find out who's this running back wearing 46 and let me see if this, and okay, that's what he can do. Oh wow, now I feel like I have a vested interest in watching these games.
Well, and even if you go a few months before that and you talk about the actual draft itself, talk about had somebody purchase that guide, and we're getting to those rounds 6 and 7, and some of these names are popping off the board again from these smaller schools, and there's a sense of entitlement to the people that have read that guide. When I was reading Emory's write-up on so-and-so from Central Whoopin' Stew State, it sure looked like he would be a guy who'd fit what my offensive coordinator is doing. So I'm going to throw him in my mock draft. And then let's just say, for example, that thing hits for that person. I mean, I don't know. I just see all the different ways that it's applicable, and it would make something like the draft, especially for folks who are struggling, because it is overwhelming, because there are so many names, to allow somebody to have already done all the homework for you and perhaps provide the answers to. Emory, one of the other really popular things that's going on out there, we finished with the draft. We're now in training camp right now, is all the talking heads out there, especially the ones up and coming. They like to use our boy there in Los Angeles, Justin Herbert. It's a little bit of a target, if you will, a little dartboard throw every now and then, whether it's to elevate their name or just kind of fall into maybe what I would believe are some false narratives. Now, listen, despite being a Charger fan, a Charger homer, if you will, I'm aware that there are some deficiencies within Justin Herbert's game, just like there are anybody's. The general consensus among the people I trust, like you and others, tends to be a much higher opinion of those of, let's say, opposing fans of other teams. But let's just say, I'm going to put this statement out there. Does Justin Herbert have a problem with being clutch? And how much pressure is there on him this year to not just make it to the playoffs, but actually win a playoff game, to avoid falling into the pitfalls and all these horrible, lazy takes that these hot takers out there are putting on him?
Yes, he does have a problem with being clutch. And that's why I love the marriage between him and Harbaugh, because we've seen this before. When Harbaugh got to San Francisco, what were people saying about Alex Smith? Alex Smith, his rookie year, he had one touchdown and 14
yeah,
like something crazy like that. And then he was in a battle his second year. And then by the time Harbaugh got there, people just considered him a bust.
they've written him off.
They written him off. Harbaugh instilled confidence in him, got him to play efficient football, got him to utilize the athleticism we always knew he had. at Utah, coming out of Urban Meyer's offense, and then got him to be a game manager plus, right? When you look at what Herbert did last year, Herbert had his best season, I felt like, last year. Why? Because he was more efficient. And so why is that? They de-emphasized him throwing the football 45 times a game, ran the ball, timely deep shots in which he was, comfortable in connecting on. He was more efficient with his throws, wasn't making a big mistake. And we saw that kind of unravel in the postseason again. So I think for guys like him, people want him to be the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens. Those guys are wired differently and they win differently. Jalen Hurts wins differently, right? He's wired different. Hurts, you can't tell. You watch him, you don't know if they're up 20 or down 20. Like, even kill.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so for Herbert, sometimes, and I've said this with other guys, that I've seen this kind of situation happen with Herbert, right? Because he's athletic. He has an arm to really lift the umbrella up off the defense. But why does it not show up, right? And so I think when you have guys like that, it can be paralysis by analysis, right? They are thinking, I don't want to make the mistake. I have these options. What should I do? Well, the innate instinct tells you take off and run. You know what I'm saying? And then that'll afford you the time to sit back there in the pocket and now go through all of these options, right? But you got to burn them a little bit first, to really get that, that time that you're looking for, because maybe you want to be a little bit more methodical. And don't forget that you're an athlete. Like, he's a big body. There's no reason why he can't run like Allen, right? And so,
sure.
And he doesn't take the big hits, so he's able to slide, get down, and I think that's why Harbaugh once again doubled down on the run game, by going and get two backs, go and get another tight end, even though this is more of a flex guy in Arondé Gadsden. But also just like, listen, man, we're going to win this thing physically. We're going to keep the game close. We're going to make you become a game manager plus. We're going to empower you to get over this mental block. And I have no reason why he can't do it, because I've seen Harbaugh do it with Alex Smith.
Well, it's funny that you say that too. He's just coming out of Michigan talking about all these special tools and all these things that JJ McCarthy has. And what did he do with JJ McCarthy? The same exact thing. Is he not oversimplified? Excuse me. He simplified everything, and he broke it down to, listen, every play you're going to touch the ball, but the game is not won or lost on every play. We're going to do our methodical approach. We're going to run the ball. And by the way, despite the fact that Najee Harris is possibly lost an eye or whatever the hell's going on with that, the pickup of him and then the drafting of Emory and Hampton, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's just more pushing towards that. We've got you, Justin. You don't need to be Superman all the time. And I think what fans have seen, there are plenty of Charger fans who'd hear you say, well, I think that was his best season. They've heard me say it too. And I'll tell you, they don't agree, because all they're doing is that box score. They see 5,000 yards. And it's just like, I'm telling you, when the guy throws 3 interceptions to finish a season, efficient play by a guy with his type of tools shows that he can work within a structure, within this particular structure, which is Greg Roman's, which now we're finally going into year 2 of an offense with Justin Herbert, by the way. Everybody talks about different quarterbacks having all these different coordinators throughout their careers. Herbert's gone through several just in the NFL, and right before that, he had a new one each year at Oregon too. So we've got same thing about Jalen Hurts. And by the way, one of the things you and I have always connected on is the fact that you're one of the few people out there who's willing to say Jalen Hurts is a badass dude. I don't know why we have to act like he can't play football. I don't know why we have to act like, oh, the Eagles did it and Jalen happened to be there. Y'all are crazy. Watch the game. Watch the way he plays. Watch how he affects it in all facets. And to me, and I'll get off Jalen Hurts in just a second, what you pointed out about him is my favorite thing about him. You never know where the Eagles are at in that game when you see Jalen Hurts. You don't know if they're down by 20 or up by 20 or the game's in the fourth quarter. He's just that same cool cat, just always even-keeled, ready to stay focused. It doesn't matter what he did the play before. And so that I could put a real nice bow on that, it would sure be nice to see the leader in Los Angeles, Justin Herbert, find a little more of that Jalen Hurts in him and really just say, if I can stay within, even if it's a little bit of an archaic offense in Roman, if I could stay within the construct of this, there's going to be opportunities. But when they're there, I have to be sure enough and confident enough to take them.
Here's what people also, because I love how nowadays people are so interested in rewriting history, like with Matthew Stafford, right? Like Stafford and Herbert, when people bring up the yards and numbers, it was a lot of iceberg lettuce, a lot of empty calories.
Yeah.
And with when I was always calling out Stafford for stat padding, right? But when I became a fan of Stafford was when they got Jim Caldwell. And I want to say the first year they got Caldwell, Stafford had like 8 game-winning drives of comebacks. And the reason why he was and I was at the Giants game covering the Giants when they played the Giants in New York. And it was a great comeback because, again, it was about efficiency. Like Stafford, yeah, you have the big arm, but we're going to run the ball. We're going to play efficient. I need you to make 4 throws a game. You know what I'm saying? In key parts of the game. Just make those 4 throws and we're going to win. That's when you saw Stafford have his highest rate of efficiency. They go to the postseason. He plays his best ball. They win. They have a winning season like 3 years in a row. And then they get rid of Caldwell saying, well, we didn't win. You know, it's like, wait a minute. Like, y'all wasn't winning consistently, prior to him. And now you're winning 3 years in a row and it ain't enough. And so now he goes to, Sean McVay and he wins that Super Bowl with that loaded team, doing his 111, which is fine.
Yeah.
And now they already say he's a Hall of Famer. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's not. I'm not there. But I'm saying Stafford because we saw what Stafford's efficiency looked like. And Sean McVay is getting him to be efficient. So now Stafford is still playing like he did under Caldwell and is making the perception of Stafford change. And so Herbert can go through the same thing with Harbaugh, and it's about just do your 111. If you do that, they'll win a lot of games. And they won a lot of games last year. I think this year's roster collectively is better, so they should win games once again.
Well, gentlemen, I'd be remiss if I didn't jump in here really quick and mention that the quarterback that leads the league in passing typically does not win the Super Bowl. I think that's what sure.
Well, by the way, and I'll make this real quick. I live in Michigan again. I pay a little bit of attention to the Lions all the time. I was banging the table for them to hire Caldwell and do what they did with him. And then the Lions broke my heart with the way they treated him on the way out. That was a big shame. Speaking of helping out your quarterback and doing these things to make them better and efficient game managers, if you will, the Chargers did that, as we touched on a little bit earlier, in the drafting of Marion Hampton, with the 22nd pick of the first round out of UNC. Kind of do it all back. I know you've got a lot of information on this guy. How do you feel he fits into what they're going to do in a Harbaugh team? And what type of expectations out there should fans have for him during his rookie season?
He's got tremendous burst. He was my number 2 running back in the class. I just love the way he attacks downhill. And it's funny, going back when you were grading Drake May's film, you always kind of looked at, 28 balling. And so fast forward to, this past year, he was kind of banged up a little bit, but you still saw the same burst, explosiveness, acceleration, good vision, good inside running ability. And I think when you pair that up with a Najee Harris, who quiet as kept, was a very good short yardage goal line runner. But now you have a guy that has more explosiveness, more burst in Hampton. It gives you the perfect 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And so I like Hampton. I think he can catch the ball in the backfield rather well. He looks the part of a running back. You kind of draw a running back up, it looks like Hampton. I heard some comparisons to DeMarco Murray. I get that he runs just like DeMarco Murray in terms of just one cut and just go. But Hampton is a really good back, and when you combine them with what they're going to do up front, running the ball with now you got Joe Alt on one side, you extended Slater, and you bring in Becton. The right side is going to be vicious, a lot of right-handed running, and and now you can still run weak side, because you got Slater on that side. So I think Zion Johnson's going to have a better year at center. So I like what they've done, and I think adding these backs, the run game will help your quarterback out, and when you got the arm to really make teams pay off play action, because you've run the ball so well, that deep 7 route or that takeoff route going to be a problem to defend.
Well, and so you kind of set me up for where I was going next, is that takeoff route. Chargers, after maybe kind of throwing a coin in the wishing well and trying to pick up Mike Williams and bring him back, he went on ahead and decided to retire, but they got things sorted out with Trey Harris, their 2nd round pick there, wide receiver Ole Miss. How does he fit into that? Or is he going to need to probably or possibly do something else on the offense? He's 6'3", about 6'3", a little over 200. So he's got a good frame, but he's got sneaky takeoff to me off the line. His release isn't the best, but I don't think it's something to be concerned about. How does he aid that offense in possibly being that X receiver? Because right now they obviously have Ladd, and you want to have Ladd on the field as often as possible. And we'll touch on this next guy in a minute, but they're still trying to figure out what to do with Quentin Johnston. Where does Trey Harris fit into this offense? And is he that guy that they are going to use to stretch the field?
I think Harris is the guy you want short to intermediate.
Okay.
I think Harris is the consistent guy, because he doesn't have problems with working back to the ball and catching the balls that coming at him, right? That's where Quentin Johnston has the issue. I noted that when he was catching the ball at TCU, it's like he's better going deeper down the field where he can track and kind of cradle. And so until he gets comfortable in catching the ball away from his body like that, he's more of a cradler. And the best balls to cradle are the ones where you can run underneath it and track it and do that. Ladd can do that as well. Ladd. I through this comparison out there, Ladd reminded me so much, and it's so funny that he ended up with the Chargers. He reminded me so much of Bambi, Lance Always.
Oh, come on.
Just how quickly he just got out of the blocks and just as he's running downfield, you could see him just increase the separation and tracking the ball. I was a big fan of Lance Alward, watching the old NFL films growing up. It's like, man, he really was out there balling, and so Lance, Ladd reminded me so much of Lance. And so they got guys that can go take the top off the defense, but getting the Trey Harris, I think, who can win at all 3 levels. But I think his role is going to be more that short slant that,
it drags any type of a bubble, sure.
Right, something quick to where because he has some more trustworthy hands in that regard.
Well, and at this point, my son has more trustworthy hands than Quentin Johnston. He's 14, and he's got horrible hands. But since we're talking about Quentin Johnston, let's look at what they've used him as. And they've been forced to use him in situations that aren't his forte. They're not necessarily what he excels at. Last year, they had him running 9s and this and that. It's interesting for me because when I saw him at TCU, I saw a guy who was fighting the ball away from when it's coming right. I mean, right where you want it as a receiver. I'm a hands catcher. I was never a body guy. I need to get my hands out in front of it to be comfortable with what's going to happen next. So I'm thinking we're going to see, and almost all Charger fans talked about it, we're going to see those drags, those slants, some bubbles. And you did see some of it last year. Do not get me wrong, but they were forced to use him in ways that didn't exactly fit his strong suit. Do you expect with them bringing in Trey Harris, having Keandre Lambert-Smith, whom they brought in, the former Nittany Lion and Auburn Tiger, do you expect them to try to really narrow down what they give Quentin Johnston on his plate as far as what they're going to ask him to do to be a successful contributor to the offense?
Even throw in Aronde Gaston, because he is like the cross between, receiver and tight end. Like he's a flex guy, right? And so, they've kind of, safe-proof the offensive passing game by what they've acquired. And I listen, you can't teach the level of explosiveness and giddy up that Johnson has. And it reminds me going back to what the Saints had and guys that had some issues with the same things Johnson had until they kind of got it together and became threats. You look at, Devery Henderson, Robert Meacham, same type of guys, right? Explosive.
Well, we know Meacham in San Diego, so to speak, before the Los Angeles experiment. We had Meacham, and he would fight the ball too. Same thing, but boy, could he run! And boy, his athleticism was off the charts.
So when you get these guys, I feel bad for a guy like Johnson now because it's the wrong era to have drops because everybody tweets about it, everybody talks about it. Social media didn't really exist like that for these other guys, right? And so you had a chance to work through your deficiencies. Like think about how we view Ted Ginn. Think about how you view Ted Ginn with the Dolphins versus how you viewed him with the Saints.
Yeah.
And so he got better. He became from how they viewed him with the Panthers to then the Saints. And so for like nowadays, guys, we are all attached to social media and attached to your phones. And especially if people are not saying this is Herbert's fault, but if people are hyping up the quarterback, anything that happens that doesn't promote the quarterback will be blamed for the reason why you're losing. I saw that out here with New York. They blame 52 people on the team before they got to Daniel Jones, as opposed to saying Daniel Jones was the problem, right? Not saying Herbert is the problem. Herbert can actually play, but it's just the fact that a guy like you can't just have a drop. Now you have a drop that cost your team the playoffs in week 1 with 14:48 left in the first quarter. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how drastic. So for a guy like Johnson, we know Johnson got skills, and when you're confident, you can overcome the yips, right? I always bring up the Nick Anderson thing. Great shooter, you know what I'm saying? But in that moment, he missed those free throws. Like he hits 1,000 of those in his sleep. But in that moment, when the lights were bright, he missed those free throws. Same thing with some of these receivers. They just got to get over that and get back to what got you to be that top prospect, and then you can elevate. I think Johnson, maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic about everybody, but I do feel like Johnson has enough to where, once he has like 2 or 3 good plays in a row, the confidence grows and he gets back to, oh man, yeah, I could do this. I can do this. And so he won't have as many drops like he had before once he gets rolling pretty quickly.
Booga, is this a bad time for me to mention that I write for the Orlando Magic with the Fans First Sports Network?
Not at all. I love Nick Anderson. So to relate that to Chargers, Nate Kading, the former kicker for the Chargers, he was money in the regular season, but when the lights got even a little brighter in the playoffs, we've all seen the meme from the Jets game that he hadn't missed all year and then missed 3 field goals. Similar to Herbert, who throws 3 interceptions all year, and then against Houston, he throws 4. It's just a Charger thing. Emory Hunt, thank you so much for joining us this evening. On your way out, please tell everybody where they can find your work and plug that draft guide one more time for me, please.
CBS Sports HQ. I'll be on there Thursday talking about the Chargers Lion game, breaking that game down pre, halftime, and post game. Be sure to check that out. Follow me on Twitter at FBall Gameplan. Instagram is all one word, Football Game Plan, and go pick up that draft guide, footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide, the largest draft guide in existence. I thought the Chargers nailed the draft and undrafted free agents. Go see the grades I have for all of the acquisitions by purchasing that draft guide.
By the way, Emory, before I let you go, I remember during the show I mentioned that game day game at UCF. It's 2018. That's when I met you. There you go.
2018. Wow. Let's see. Here's the thing. Like, I see stuff because I just stay in motion. I see things and I'm like, man, this was 2012. Like, whoa, like crazy. And so we're in 2025. So, I mean, Football Game Plan has been in existence since 2007. We're coming up on that would be what, 18-year anniversary.
I'll give you a bell for that too. Why not? There you go.
So it's been doing it a lot. Seen a lot, done a lot, and glad I still have enough memory of wherewithal to kind of recall some things.
Thanks.
All I know
like Lance Allward. Nobody knew that his nickname was Bambi.
Bambi. Oh, Charger. I'm telling you, the older fans like me that are going to tune in and listen to this, they're automatically going to fall in love as soon as they hear your take on Bambi. Emory Hunt, folks, thank you so much, Emory. We appreciate you so much. Guys, you're listening to Bolt Blitz Uncut here on YouTube and Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, here on X. We're about to be joined by another esteemed guest, if you will, and I'll actually get where he's at proper and right this time. Coming into the show, my man E-Dub, Eric Williams, now of Fox Sports. Eric Williams, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for getting that correct, Booga. Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Kyle.
Good to meet you, Eric. Thank you.
Eric, there's a lot going on in Charger land. We just got to spend quite a bit of time with Emory Hunt talking about it. You've had boots on the ground, if you will, there in both Los Angeles and I believe you also went to the San Diego stuff there that they were doing on at the military base. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing during this training camp. You're to a Harbaugh. Is there anything that stands out as being different, or just anything that consistently you can say they're really trying to drive this point home?
Yeah, you're right, Booga. I was in Los Angeles for the start of training camp, and then went to 2 days of training camp here in San Diego, where I still live. Was able to get over to University of San Diego. Good vibe there in terms of, the amount of fans that were there. They had a day just for military, and then a day for season ticket holders. I think it's what you said. It's just kind of building on what they are trying to establish their first season with this team. Obviously they're trying to beef up, the offensive line, what's happening there. They brought in Becton at right guard to kind of give them a little more attitude, a little more swag, a little more physicality to what they're doing up front. So I think they're hopeful that they're going to get better offensive line play, which is important in terms of protecting the moneymaker, which is their quarterback, Herbert. And then what you were talking with Emory, the playmakers. I think that's evident, all three practices that I went to. Trey Harris looks like he's going to be able to contribute. But the guy that's really stood out to me is Keandre Lambert-Smith, kid out of Auburn. Just seems like he makes a play every time I'm at practice. The one thing that is noticeable to me is his ability to adjust to the football, which is hard to teach for receivers. He's very comfortable being uncomfortable, in those 50-50 ball situations, and was able to win a lot of those. And whenever you have a receiver like that, you want to throw him the football even more. And so you could tell that Herbert is developing a rapport and a trust with Keandre in terms of being able to locate those deep balls and being able to come up with them. And then the other guy for me is Oronde Gadsden. I thought that he really jumped in terms of his speed, ability to attack the middle of the defense. It's hard to judge running backs, but Amarion is an imposing figure when you look at him on the field. I mean, he's just one big muscle. And that was one of the things I noticed when I was at the combine in Indy is, a lot of those running backs were running really fast. He certainly was one of those guys. And I think the addition of him along with Harris, once he's healthy, is going to make running the football even easier for this offense. The blocking doesn't have to be perfect when you have two physical running backs like that. If they miss a block or two here, those guys could run through tackles, and I think it's going to make their running game even more imposing.
Well, and clearly, like you mentioned at the beginning of your appearance, it's the goal. You brought in Najee. You draft a first-round running back in Amari and Hampton. I mean, it's clear what they want to do. And now to piggyback off that, we can hear everything that Harbaugh's saying, to the media, to all of us, to all of Charger land. All of us have to step up our game to meet the level of Justin Herbert. So in your mind, could you imagine being Justin? No pressure at all. Golly. But so they're taking steps in that direction, and you see a Keandre Lambert-Smith, and I'm so glad you brought up the 50-50 catch ability, because people see a guy of his stature and they automatically think, no, 6'4", 230 like Mike Dubb, that's a 50-50 guy. No, right. It is incredibly difficult to teach, and I'm not sure that you can. There's something about being able to get up and high point that ball at the catch point at the top, as opposed to waiting on it. And you see it in the clips that I've seen anyway, and I'm sure you've seen it live. He is in perfect positioning, good body positioning. Watch his feet. He's so cognizant of where he's at on the field. He's an exciting surprise. And the speed of Gadsden is something that people have been pointing out to me too. They weren't quite expecting him to be as crisp as he is. It sounds like you noticed that stuff too, which again, those playmakers, lending itself to those playmakers. That Houston playoff game, it was just Ladd. I'd say Ortiz and Harbaugh, there were no more opportunities for that to ever be the case. They brought in the playmakers.
Yeah, Will Disley can't be your number two guy that you're throwing the football to. I mean, that's just not going to get it done in terms of where they want to go. And I don't think that's no longer the case going to the season, because Q's gotten a little better, in terms of making plays. I know, Charger Twitter is all over, when he drops the ball occasionally. But I thought he had a pretty good year too in terms of what he did his rookie season. And he looks a lot more comfortable in camp in terms of catching the football. Is that going to translate to Sundays? That's the hope if you're the Chargers, particularly with Mike retiring, unexpectedly. Now you're expecting Q to really be that number 2 opposite Ladd. And Ladd looks awesome, by the way. I mean, it's fun to really watch him in practice. He's eating guys up in one-on-ones, really has a great chemistry with Justin. And I think the hope is Justin and Ladd become kind of the new version of Phillip and Gates in terms of, I used to compare Gates and Phillip to John, I'm blanking, Utah Jazz. Karl Malone and John Stockton.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
When they run the pick and roll, like they always made you wrong. Phillip and Gates always made you wrong in terms of guessing how they were going to run that route. And I think Ladd and Herbert can be the latest version of that for the Chargers.
That was one of my favorite things about Antonio Gates is just introducing me to choice routes and what they meant within that offense, especially when Norv was there. Just so much of you really in that type of an offense or those type of a quarterback to route progression situation, you really have to trust each other to the fullest. That's something that obviously Rivers and Gates had. We saw what Herbert and Ladd are starting to build. It's exciting to hear what you had to say. Harbaugh, of course, is calling Ladd unguardable in practice, but I've heard that from other folks too, not just the head coach. So that's definitely exciting. You talked about Will Disley and in that tight end room and Gadsden. What are your expectations then for Tyler Conklin? Because I kind of feel like he's not the odd man out, but he's just not getting talked about enough. And there was a little bit of hype, like, this is kind of that Y slot. He's not going to block anybody. I know he's willing. But he's not really going to block anybody, but he's a Y slot who's actually kind of a really nifty route runner. Where does he kind of fall into that tight end room now?
I think he's going to be a guy that catches balls for you, particularly in the red zone when you run a lot of 12 or 13. When I was with the Seahawks, they ran a lot of 12 and 13 the first couple of years that Russell was there, as he kind of transitioned from college to pro. And I think in those red zone situations where teams are expecting you to run the football, or when you go heavy like that, he's a person that can get open and is going to catch the football for you in those types of situations. So, is he going to be a 60, 70 catch guy? Probably not, but maybe he's a 15, 20 catch guy that makes some important catches for you on third down in the red zone that helps you win games.
And for me, I kind of poo-pooed the signing, to be honest. I wasn't overly excited. I was still pouting about the fact that the Chargers didn't find a way to draft Mason Taylor, but that's a story for another day. I still think in a Greg Roman offense, that would have been a beautiful thing. I know our future co-host, Simons, across the pond in London, he's the one who got me turned on to Mason Taylor, so I know he'd echo that sentiment even louder. Let's move on to something that, that has already been covered by everyone and their dog, but not by BoltBlitz. The Chargers obviously came out and had the world waiting with bated breath for the announcement of their new jersey reveal. What are your thoughts on the new jerseys? I'm going to throw mine out there fast. I'll always love navy on navy. I expected there to be some introduction of a yellow jersey, but boy, the yellow on yellow. What are your thoughts on the jerseys? And is there anything that you would have done differently or maybe it disappointed you?
So I'm like you. I like the navy on navy the best. Phillip Rivers actually liked navy on navy the best. For me, I just think it pops. It just looks clean. The yellow, it reminds me a little bit of the Seahawks Rave green. I think it's a little too much, in my opinion. I like the gold as an accent color and not just like that highlighter look. Why mess with a good thing? I mean, the powder blues are the best uniforms in maybe all sports. So I didn't need another, alternative uniform in my opinion, but hey, you got to swell swag, right? So I get it.
And as much of it as possible, apparently, no matter what color it is. Just to touch on the yellow, if they would have done white pants with it, it would have been beautiful.
Yeah, just some contrast, in my opinion.
See, but gentlemen, you're settling me up because Eric, I hear if it came to me, the one of those that I would highlight is the navy blue. What full dad joke? I apologize, Eric. Carry on.
So, Eric,
go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say is the one thing I forgot to mention for everybody who's listening to this back and you get to this point, our boy E-Dub right here is a former wide receiver too. So when you guys hear him breaking down wide receiver play and talking about what these receiving weapons and playmakers do, I hope you guys give a little more credence than you generally would some folks. Eric knows what he's talking about. And when it comes to the playmakers on the Chargers, I'm pleasantly surprised with kind of how it's developing throughout camp. It's not that I didn't expect much from KLS or Gadsden. I just didn't know how that would come to fruition so early or what it would look like. Obviously, again, the games that are about to be played aren't the games that count, but they are installing, real techniques and real sub package within what they're going to really make the frame of their offense. So I just hope everybody out there in Charger land is pleased with what we're talking about here and able to kind of bring it in. For everybody who's just joining us, you're listening to BoltBlitz Uncut on StreamYard, YouTube, and formerly Twitter, but now it's X. I'm your host, Booga Peters, joined by my producer extraordinaire, Kyle Nash. And right now we're speaking with Eric Williams. We've had a wonderful time. We're about to close it off right here. And because Emory doesn't cover the Chargers specifically, I didn't run him down this path, but you do. So I'm going to get you right here with the record prediction. I got to do it every time I bring somebody on that debut show of the season. The Chargers, where they sit right now, I feel like, especially you who's been there around training camp and around the team so much, I feel like you probably have a pretty decent grasp of at least the direction the team is going in each individual position group. A little record prediction, and maybe if you have any surprise guy to make the team that you could throw in there, that'd be great. Or maybe even a surprise cut.
Well, let's go record first. I like 10-7. Maybe a step back a little bit. But that said, I still feel like they'll make the playoffs and maybe win a road playoff game and be a team that's kind of peaking at the end of the year. Schedule's pretty tough. The division is really tough. And so I think that's why I'm predicting a little bit of step back in terms of the record, still reaching the playoffs, and then a road playoff game where maybe they're not the favorites and can sneak up on a team on the road. I don't really have a surprise cut. Or
I don't think it's one of those years, really. I feel like it's kind of the way we think it's going to be. Does that make sense?
The one thing that I would say is with all the rotations on the offensive line, I like their depth this year better than last year. Yeah. I like the idea of Trey Pipkins being a swing tackle. I like the idea of bringing, I think it's James to compete at center.
Andre James, yeah.
And to give you some depth there in the interior. Pipkins can also play guard. I'm not concerned about who the starting five are going to be necessarily, because it's a 17-game season. Guys are going to get hurt. Other guys are going to have to come in and play. So I like the idea of rotating a bunch of guys now to kind of build, positional flexibility and depth. And I feel like depth-wise, they're better than they were a year ago, which is to be expected.
Well, and that's the hope, and I'm assuming that was the plan all along. Before we get you out of here, we're going to stick on that offensive line real quick. Just running it back with Zion and Bozeman, huh? Boy, did that get the fans real excited. I got a little excited when they started to talk about the prospect of Zion playing center, but we talk about this being an O-line centric building, and we talk about competitors welcome. And I feel like the bringing back of both Zion and Bozeman, it does show how confident they are in them, but it is a little contradictory to the competitors welcome when it's, we got Andre James and whatever, but we're kind of going with these guys. What was your initial reaction to them sticking with Zion and Bozeman? And then do you think that this late surge from Jamari Sawyer getting some starting reps there is a real one? And does he have a real chance at starting at left guard?
I don't think it's a real one. I think it's about building depth, what I talked about earlier. Yeah. I think they like the idea that they got a bunch of snaps with those two guys last year. And I think if you look at any offensive line, it's really about getting as many reps as possible with those five guys and kind of building that chemistry over time. I know when I covered the Seahawks, the first year they had Marshawn, they were awful at running the football. And a lot of people thought Marshawn sucked. I was like, no, Marshawn doesn't suck.
Yeah, right.
And so it was really the O-line and kind of building that chemistry. And then the following year in 2012, that's when Marshawn just went off. And it's because they they took the time to kind of build that chemistry. They didn't get new guys. They just got a bunch of reps with those guys. And so that's kind of how I see it. They did add Becton, which is huge because now you have more talent. But I just really think, again, it's positional versatility. Guys are going to get hurt. You know, O-line's more about 5 guys working as one. That's more than, you know, talent, unless you're the Eagles and you just have dudes at all 5 spots. And not everybody's like that, especially because you paid those 2 tackles. So if you paid those 2 tackles, you got to find guys in the 3 interior. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Well, and I'll admit my initial reaction was I was pissed. I was so pissed. But that being said, so when I let down my feelings and I drop down my emotions and I look at the fact that there are 4 first-round offensive linemen on that line, and like any offensive line that we've ever watched be successful, the more games that they do have to build that cohesion, regardless of the 5 names, the better off they're going to be. We've seen some guys that weren't the greatest offensive linemen, maybe like a Shane Olivier playing right tackle for the Chargers, but boy, those 4 other guys were pretty solid. We saw Jeremy Clary, who developed into a pretty solid lineman towards the end of his career. He was a guy that not a lot of people had a lot of confidence in, but they just started to rep it out and get that done. Eric, we got our next guest waiting in studio, so I'm going to sign you off right here. But please, Mr. Eric Williams, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, hit me up on X at Eric_D_Williams. You can find me on Instagram at EDubNFL, and then you can find my written work at foxsports.com. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for
Appreciate
coming,
you, man. Have a great night. EDub, it's always great having Eric on our shows. Eric's been coming on my show since, I believe it was 2013. One of the second or third shows I did actually had Eric as a guest on there. We did Adam Rank of NFL.com, and then we had Eric Williams. But before I proceed even a moment further, I'd like to provide the proper introduction for our guest now. Speaking of people who've come on my show and just literally been the favorite, echoed by so many dozens and dozens of listeners, we are now joined by former Chargers defensive lineman, former cover of Sports Illustrated, big mouth, Burt Grossman. I could not be happier than I am now to have you on the show. How you doing, my man?
Dude, that sounded just weird. People that have come on my show.
I know, I said that shit twice, dude. You fucker, I should have known you were going to point it out.
This is why we can't have nice things, Booga. Good job.
Oh, man.
It's a perfect way to start off an introduction to Burt Grossman. Burt, I know you're right there in San Diego. You're all things football all the time. I know you've got a real close beat on what's going on with these Chargers. How'd you feel about the offseason? Is there anything in particular that stood out to you?
Not especially. You know what stood out? I mean, here in San Diego, we're so used to, before Peter Seidler passed away, we're so used to just constantly complaining about how much the Padres spend and how cheap Dean Spanos is. And the thing about this offseason, it seems to be like all of a sudden Dean's spending all this money and the Padres won't do anything. It's just a complete reversal. I don't know. I mean, you almost think like the NFL told him, like, we gave you LA. You can't mess it up. You can't do it. You need to hire people that know what they're doing, which he finally did. And I think they're going to actually be great, to be honest with you.
Well, and I hope you're right. That's what we hope for the Chargers too. And what's funny is forever fans out there have talked about Dean Spanos and his inability to want to spend money. But like you said, that's exactly what he's been doing. When Bosa was still a Charger, he was made the top paid player at his position. Derwin, Herbert. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, Rashawn Slater now, who just signed the big deal. We know what the Bolt looks like. Well, at least the people who've seen it. I'm sure it's gorgeous, and I can't wait to eventually check it out. But we're kind of killing that old rhetoric, and I do believe there is some truth to what you said. I believe the NFL went to him and said, listen, Dean, we're going to let you do this. You could be the rent or whatever, but no more of this cheap shit. I'm sure there was some form of guidelines, at least bullet pointed out to him, saying, here are some expectations. Whether or not that's real true or hardcore that is, I don't know. But let's get to your expertise. Let's start talking about the defensive line. The Chargers were able to bring back Khalil Mack. Your thoughts on Mack coming back and just the phenom he is at his age and still able to make the plays that he makes?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem you have to deal with, though, when he's that age. It's, you don't slowly fall off, it's you just fall off the bridge one day. So I hope it's not this year. I hope he has a couple more left in him. But, you know, at that age, it's not like being Tom Brady and playing quarterback, you know, into your 40s or something. It's a demanding spot on the edge in the NFL. So I don't know. I hope he doesn't fall off this year. I mean, obviously he's not going to be in his prime, but, you know, Vaughn Miller's been doing it for a while, so maybe he can. But I just don't know if he's the same force, to be honest with you, just because of the age, obviously. But
well, sure, and we saw that towards the end of last year too. We really did. There were some times where he'd get washed out a little bit too easily late in games. And again, part of that's age and, you know, maybe some conditioning at that point in the season. But again, he's at on the precipice of the end of his career. I do believe that he'll kind of finish out the way that Vaughn is going to, where he might hop around a couple times. But my hope is they get the best out of him. But I don't know that they can do that in this. And the reason that I say that is the depth behind him. You have Tuli Pelotu on the other side. And then even though Kyle Kennard was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, that was in college. I mean, I know it's in the SEC, but these are different boys. These offensive linemen are different. Do you expect there to be an issue getting after the passer when you add all the pieces in together? A young Kyle Kennard, Tuli Pelotu, we're still trying to figure out exactly what he is. We know he can stop the run. Can he effectively get after the passer consistently, though? And then what's Matt got left?
That's a good question. I don't know, and I guess you'll see. You know, I love their defensive coordinator, and he mixes it up so well. So, I mean, I guess you just make it up blitzing a lot or doing some blitzes. But, yeah, they're not the guys, 4 guys that are going to just line up and do 4-man pressure the whole time and get pressure. They're just not that group. And I think they'll get there. I think just, you know, at this point, Harbaugh decided, I'm going to build the O-line first, and then I'll take care of the D-line, and he's in the O-line process right now.
It's you really set me up perfectly because I feel like since Harbaugh took over, it's kind of been an exercise in patience to kind of see how his plan plays out. This isn't just a 1 or 2 year fix. What Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco left this team with was just a bunch of a fucking mess.
Garbage.
It takes time to figure that shit out and really establish your culture. And then it's really just starting to plug in the pieces on the field. They have a very specific plan on the type of player and who they want to come in. And it feels as though they've tried to adjust that. You know, after watching Ladd McConkey be the only playmaker they had in that Houston game, they went out and they got a Trey Smith. They drafted a first-round running back. They grabbed Keandre Lambert-Smith in the 5th round and then another tight end in the 5th round, Rondé Gadsden. But I say all that to say, piggybacking off of what Burt just said, fans really need to stay patient because this is still the beginning. There's still something that needs to happen.
And he's methodical, and he's always been methodical. I mean, I've known Jim since I was in college. His dad was my coach at Pitt.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, his brother was a GA when I was at Pitt. So I've known the family forever. I've known Jim forever, you know, because I coached his son here in San Diego when he was in high school. He's been methodical and won everywhere. You know, University of San Diego won. Went to Stanford, won. You know, the 49ers win, Michigan win. I mean, he wins everywhere. And he does it right. He doesn't try to, you know, throw everything together, this mishmash piece where you're just going to be good for a year. He builds the program. And if you manage expectations and give him a few years, it's exactly what you'll see.
Well, I'm glad you said that, too, because, again, as soon as Harbaugh gets hired, everybody sees the resume you just talked about, and it's like, oh, well, we should win right now. Last year was insane to me that they won 11 games. Couldn't believe that they pulled 11 games out of that roster. How surprised were you if you expect that again this year, or better, or do they fall off?
No, I think they're better. I like you didn't think they win 11 games last year because that roster was trash and the cap was trashed. I mean, everything was trash about it. Like you said earlier, Telesco just I don't know how he got the Raiders job, but and Brandon Staley, they just. And it's a long line. We had to deal with the Mike McCoys. I mean, it's been a long line of cheap coaches, coordinators. I mean, that's the biggest problem with the Chargers. Not anymore, obviously, because they went out and spent a lot of money and got Harbaugh. You know, every year it would be, I'm going to go get a coordinator. I'm never going to go get a winner and spend some money. I'm always going to get a coordinator, and they always missed on their coordinators that they hired. I mean, I remember McCoy coming from Denver and just automatically knowing he wasn't going to be good because he was the offense coordinator. And there was no offense coordinator. Peyton Manning was the offense coordinator of that team that year.
Right.
When they won the Super Bowl. So he gets credit for it. But if you know anything about football, it's like, all right, it's Peyton Manning. He's the offense coordinator. He's running the offense. It isn't the coordinator. They win the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning and hire the offense coordinator, and that's disaster too. But I guess just after so long, I don't think they figured it out. I think they got forced into it. But to hire somebody that actually is good and actually is a leader and actually can win.
Hey, Booga, is this a bad time for me to point out one of the first times that you were on my podcast that you were defending Staley at coach at that point in time? And I've
had to defend every quarterback and coach of this team. My God. I knew McCoy was going to be a bad coach because he was a close hugger.
Yeah.
I'm at a press conference. I went to shake his hand, and he gave me the closest hug of all time. I've got pictures of us at MTS Miramar months later, and he's pulling me in, man. That's when I kind of had. I'm just telling you, I don't want that out of my football coach. I don't want that out of my dad.
Information you get here on the BoltBlitz, ladies and gentlemen. There you go.
Straight up honesty. It used to be through a lot of suds and bubbles, but we're # mostly sober now. Burt, you've said that.
You know what? I actually thought Brandon Staley was going to be good, to be honest with you, because he descended so quick and moved up, and his defenses were great at the Rams. He had the talent, obviously, but to be that young and to move up that quick, you have to have something going on. But as far as play calling and play design, he does. But you see him out there doing yoga and shit in the pregame warm-ups. He's obviously not a leader of men by any means. Some guys are just meant to be coordinators.
Well, and that would have been just fine for him because he was a fabulous coordinator. The one thing I didn't think we'd have to worry about was the defense. And they're finishing in the bottom 5 spots of the league every year. So if, let's say, they're in the top 5 spots, well, I can overlook the downward dog kitty cat pose going on the turf down there for everybody. I mean, God damn it, the whole internet saw that shit. I can't imagine what the players were getting because I'm a nobody. My phone went crazy.
Wait, you don't think Chuck Noll used to do that?
Yeah, putting on his tights and his leotard.
Doing butt flexes.
He would, but in your defense, and again, I wasn't just defending him to be a homer, Kyle. I really did think that Brandon had something for all the reasons that Burt had discussed. To move up as quickly as he did, and I love the style of defense that he played. He was aggressive in a way that wasn't really schemed aggressively, if that makes sense. But then when he came to the Chargers, he wanted to plug in his guys, and then the J.C. Jackson experiment and how all that shit got wonky, but we no longer have to worry about that because, like we have tried to decide now for everybody, the league forced the Chargers to take their heads out of their asses.
Without a doubt.
They've got some real people in place. The question is can the fans be patient enough while this thing develops? Because I'll tell you right now, they're still not done on that offensive line. I still think they want another year and another class to bring in their own center to start from the ground up. And I know that they don't have all the pieces that Jesse Minter wants there.
And they do. I mean, if you look at it, I think they're a couple years out still. I mean, they couldn't. We talked about their D-line. If they had to play the Eagles would just maul and annihilate them physically at this point. And it took the Eagles a while too, but they're kind of doing the same blueprint as the Eagles are. Get big, get physical, and then get people around it. But it takes a few years, even with free agency in the draft. It still takes you 2 or 3 years to do that on both sides of the ball.
Well, Burt, you mentioned the Eagles too. I talked to Nick Sirianni with Phoenix about the key to building that team together. He said inside out, which, hey, as an O-lineman playing semi-pro, I was glad to hear. I don't know how you could do more of that than bringing in Harbaugh to get that started. I would say that.
I would agree, unless you could steal Howie Roseman away from the Eagles, that would probably be good too.
Fair point.
but other than that, I mean, Harbaugh's the guy to do it. That's what he does, and he always does it well, and he always wins. He doesn't have any failures yet. I don't think Chargers are going to be the failure on his resume, to be honest with you.
So that's literally where we're going with this. Are the Chargers and the Charger luck and the Chargering they too strong to allow Harbaugh to do what he's done everywhere else? Is this the place? Is this the destination where Harbaugh finally loses, or do you think he gets it done here like he has everywhere else?
I think he gets it done here. If you would have told, if it was 10 years ago, I would have said no, because like you said, all the Chargering is more, we think it's a curse, but it's just the people they hire. It's, you hire Brandon Staley, you hire Tom Telesco. You hire McCoy. You hire Norv and get rid of Schottenheimer. I mean, that's the Chargering right there. It's not a curse. It's a bad owner and making bad decisions. The Chargers in 2006 were the best team in football. You didn't have to do anything, and they probably would have been the team of the decade the way that team was built, and been the New England Patriots. They would have been that team, but they dismantled it all over the stupidest shit and another bad decision, and just one after the other after that. So this is the first one where they've actually, we're not going to get a goofy pro personnel guy from, Indianapolis. I'm not going to let my two dopey sons friggin' run the team. It's basically Harbaugh, the GM, and that's it. I mean, they call the shots. And Dean should just sit back and make money at this point, because that's what's going to do for him. And he'll probably sell the team anyway to begin with, down the road the next 5-6 years, I'd imagine. So I don't see even Dean staying in long term.
Burt, you're real good at this, because my next thing was going to eventually be, is this the beginning of where we see the Chargers start to ascend? Dean realizes that quantifiable value, and does he strongly consider selling this team within the next 5 to 7, maybe 10 years? In your opinion?
I don't. You know what? It's hard to tell, because I don't know if you can sell a team that doesn't have their own stadium that rents a stadium.
I don't know how it works
there. Like, who's going to buy that? I mean, there's obviously people that are going to buy it. I'm not saying that, but we always have this dream somebody's going to buy it, move it back to San Diego, which would be great, but it's not going to happen. But I don't know. Didn't he just sell like 30% or something recently?
I know they've done enough selling off to where he still has the majority percent, but it's been so hard to keep up with who owns what of the Chargers. I kind of just gave up. As far as I'm concerned, it's still the Spanos family. It appears he's willing to spend money, whether he was forced to or not. Should he sell? I think it would be an omen, or excuse me, it'd be a message to San Diego that the fans are worth more to the team than he was willing to show. Though it wasn't just Spanos' fault. Let's not be ridiculous. But I don't know. If he sells, I think most of the fan base, even the ones who are still Charger fans, would be ecstatic, because they'd just be interested to see who would come in there and spend that kind of money. Who knows who it would be? And even though they don't have a stadium at this point, depending on who they would be sold to, maybe they'd build them one. Maybe it's Elon Musk and they put it on the fucking moon. I don't know.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. He hasn't even. I read somewhere he hasn't even started paying down the $600 million relocation fee, has he?
No, not yet. And as far as now, don't quote me, but I'm fairly certain not yet, not a penny.
Yeah, that's a big add-on to your price to have no stadium. $600 million you owe the league. I don't know how the other owners.
When you're selling,
yeah,
that's kind of shitty. Burt, tell us what you're doing right now, man. It's hard for me to keep up with you, but I see you out there in San Diego all the time working with Paul Rudy. Tell us what you're doing right now.
Right now I'm president of the indoor football team here, the Strike Force. So we just finished our season. We have a playoff game. First playoff games next week against the Arizona Rattlers.
All right.
And then right after that, then high school football starts up, and then Paul and I co-host that show with Brandon Stone, the Prep Pigskin Review.
Yeah.
Friday night, it's like 2-hour-long show. That's about it, pretty much.
Yeah, well, you didn't add any trouble in there, so the fact that you're staying out of trouble is good for everybody out there in Chargerland. Bolt fam, I hope you enjoyed his visit as much as I did. This has been Burt Grossman. Burt, give him that Twitter handle so we can find you on X, please.
I don't even know my Twitter handle, man.
Is Burt Grossman.
Is it Burt _ Grossman, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. I don't even know it, man.
Well, we should know it as your host, but damn it, I was so excited when we saw you pop up. I forgot I was talking to Eric, and I was just ready to dive into all things Burt Grossman. Burt, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to talk you into coming back, and I look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Tom Drake says hi, too.
Hey, you tell Tom I love him to death. I can't wait to meet him in person. He's somebody that, even though I quit drinking, when I do meet him, I'll definitely drink that day. Yeah,
you're gonna have to drink if you're meeting Tom.
I kind of figured that out after being his Facebook friend for 5 years.
Yeah,
but 10 years
he doesn't take a night off. I'm like, God Lord, dude, to stay in one night and watch TV.
and he still looks all good. It's frustrating. He still looks good. We love you, Tom. Thanks for everything you do to help support BoltBlitz. He's been a great supporter of mine and BoltBlitz since almost the beginning. Speaking of BoltBlitz, you guys have been listening to BoltBlitz Uncut on YouTube, formerly known as Twitter X, and also StreamYard. My name is Booga Peters. Thanks for checking us out. Have a great night. We'll see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Goodbye.